In 2018, we took back the House with a record-breaking blue wave. We won tight races, flooded Congress with a bold new class of Democrats, and put a definitive check on the Trump agenda. We won because of an unprecedented surge of grassroots activism and an innovative strategy that allowed you to maximize your impact in your closest swing district. But conservatives still have power in the White House, Senate, and in state houses around the country. So for 2019 and 2020, we're going even bigger. If we play our cards right, we can not only beat Trump and the GOP, but also set up a decade of progressive victories. We have the opportunity to not only win back the White House, but also the U.S. Senate and the state houses necessary to undo some of the worst Republican gerrymanders. Swing Left will continue to work in U.S. House elections, but winning these other races will help put our country back on the right track. We're going to win the popular vote, again, in 2020. But to take back the White House, we need to win presidential swing states and their electoral college votes, too. If we flip these 6 presidential swing states that Clinton narrowly lost, we'll clinch the presidency. Now, the U.S. Senate is currently controlled by Republicans 53-47. If we can flip 4 Republican seats while not losing any Democratic ones, we'll take back the Senate. And if a Democratic vice president is elected in 2020, then we only really need 3 to gain the majority. We think the seats in North Carolina, Maine, Colorado, and Arizona are the most winnable. Let's talk about taking back state houses. In 2010, the GOP elected governors and state legislators who redrew district maps to unfairly favor electing more Republicans, both in the state houses and in the U.S. House of Representatives. In 2020, we have a once-in-a-decade opportunity to undo this extreme partisan gerrymandering. If we flip the state houses in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas, fair district maps that actually represent the electorate will be drawn after the 2020 census, and we'll see more progressive wins for the next 10 years. In fact, we estimate flipping 12 more congressional seats in 2022 with these fairer maps. So as we talk through the basics of what we need to win the White House, the Senate, and state houses, you may have noticed that many of the important battles are concentrated in the same few states, what Swing Left is calling the super states. Winning the super states is how we'll win the country. Think about it. If you help register a voter in North Carolina, that voter can help us win a key presidential swing state race, a key Senate seat, and state house and Senate races necessary to roll back North Carolina's awful gerrymander, all with a single vote. That's what our super state strategy is all about, maximizing the impact of your time and money. This is the key to both beating Trump and locking in long-term Democratic progress. Now, you're probably wondering how you can help and where to get started. Well, first, registering voters will be one of the most important things we can do to win the super states. This is different from the 2018 midterms. Here's why. In the midterms, we focused on turning out voters on Election Day because only a little more than half of registered voters typically vote in the midterms. More turnout meant winning elections. But in presidential election years, turnout isn't the biggest obstacle, since we can expect close to 90% of registered voters to vote. That's why we're going to focus on registering new voters, and we'll do it in the super states where the votes will have the biggest impact. And starting now, you can register voters from anywhere because we're piloting a method of voter registration by mail. We'll write personal letters, lots and lots of letters, to potential new voters, which is one of the most effective ways to get someone to register to vote. With this method, you can make an impact in places like North Carolina, even if you live all the way in California. Secondly, at Swing Left, we know how early money can make a difference in winning elections. And it's another action you can take right now from anywhere. We focus on raising money early because candidates often come out of the primaries cash poor and need immediate funds to start hiring staff and buying ads to beat their Republican opponent. It's how we made sure our nominees in 2018 started the general election strong. That's why we're going to start raising money for our super state nominees now, so we can deliver them a big blue check early on at the moment of absolute highest impact. So let's recap. In 2020, we're going to take back all the houses. the White House, the Senate, and the State Houses, key for redistricting. We're also going to defend the Democratic majority in the House and work to expand it in key swing districts. And no matter where you live, you can start now by registering voters in person or by mail and raising money for candidates in the super states. Are you ready for 2020 to be the year we take back our government and set up a decade of progressive victories? We can't afford to wait. Now, let's get to work.
Hey folks, I'm Matt Ewing, Swing Left's Managing Director. I'm out here in Oakland, and now that you've spent a little bit of time hearing about our big picture vision, I wanted to spend some time getting a little deeper into the weeds with you. On the phone with me are a couple of my colleagues coming to you from across the country. So we're going to take about 10 or 15 minutes to walk through some of the questions that we've been hearing from group leaders and house party hosts and folks all over the country, so that we can really get into the nuts and bolts of what this strategy means and what we're going to be doing for the next 2.5 years. So before I go any further, Jenny, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Jennifer Ice, and I'm down in Southern California, and I'm the field director for the Western United States.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. And Marisa?
Hey, everybody. Marisa Kanoff here, National Field Director, and I'm coming to you from Arlington, Virginia.
Awesome. So you're going to hear a bunch more from these folks. They are a central part of our organizing team, and probably names and faces you recognize if you've been working with Swing Left for a little while. I'm really excited that we're rolling this house party strategy out at house parties. House parties are kind of where we got started in organizing at Swing Left. On March 4th, 2017, we asked people to host a house party to talk about this crazy new organization called Swing Left, and hundreds of you guys did. And you started canvassing, you started knocking on doors, you started focusing on swing districts, and just under 2 years later, you won back the House. It was a really incredible moment for all of us to be part of. And it's really exciting to me that we now get to launch this next chapter of our organization, also at these house parties, also with groups of people in living rooms all over this country. We are going to focus on a new mission. We have a broader mandate. 2020 is a really exciting year. We can make changes that won't only impact the next years to come, but really the next decade. So that's an enormous opportunity. But I wanted to start by saying, as someone who's been with Swing Left for a little over 2 years now, we're also really holding on to that core essence that we think it defines Swing Left. And really what that means is that for a lot of us, we know that there are elections that matter a lot in this country. There's elections that have national impact, and most of us don't get to vote in them because there aren't that many of them. Frankly, there aren't enough of them. And so these few elections that really do matter, they have this national outsized impact. And if you're like me, living in Oakland, California, with Barbara Lee as your representative, life is good here, but I read the New York Times every day and I get scared for what it means for my children. So we're staying true to this idea that we all want to have an impact, that we know that elections matter. And Swing Left, we really see our primary role here is to help you figure out effective ways to spend your time or spend your money to win these key races. So looking forward to 2020, we're no longer just focused on the House. We're focused on a lot of fights. And that's a little bit, can feel overwhelming sometimes, but it's mostly really exciting. We have so many fights to focus on because there's so many places we can win. We can win back the White House. We can beat Donald Trump. We can flip the Senate. We can get control over that chamber, stop these crazy judges from going through, stop things like this government shutdown from happening. We can win redistricting. We can make sure that we have fair maps going in for the next decade. We can defend the House, and actually, I think we can expand our majorities in the House. So there's a lot going on in 2020. There's a lot to keep track of, but we think this super state strategy is really the key to allowing all of us to focus our time and our energy in the places where it matters the most. And again, our job here at Swing Left is to make sure that you have effective ways to engage in those fights from wherever you are. All right, so let's dig into a little bit more. One thing that we've heard a lot about is, are these our final states? Is this all the super states there are? What about some of the other places I've heard about? So Jenny, do you want to talk a little bit about how we think about the super states? How final is this list?
Right. Well, obviously, this isn't the final list. This is just our first list based on the data we have at this moment. But we'll be keeping our eyes, like we did last cycle, on polling and other intel to see how things shift around between now and Election Day. And we We feel pretty confident these are the right initial states, but we expect that there'll be changes as nominees emerge, both the top of the ticket and further down. There are some states that are incredibly important, but that we don't call our super states. They're still important. And that's because they're not top tier in any of the fights, or they're only relevant to one of those fights. And those are states like Iowa and Minnesota and New Hampshire. And if you live in a state like that, we're going to be doing everything we can to support your organizing there locally. But we're probably going to be working to send out of state help from other parts of the country into the super states that Matt was talking about.
We'll keep our data guys looking and gals looking after this. And as things shift, as candidates emerge, you all will be the first to know. But this is a great list. Thanks, Jenny. All right, Marisa, here's an important question that comes up, especially from folks that have been with us for a little while, which is about their local swing district, a place that they maybe worked on last cycle, a member of Congress who they really want to defeat, or someone who they just barely elected. The House is not really part of the super state map. How do we think about that? And do they still get to work on those races as part of Swing Left?
Thanks, Matt. And that's a great question, one that we've been hearing from a lot of you. So I want to talk a little bit about, kind of defense versus offense, right? You guys did such great work last cycle. We took back these 40 seats. We got this Democratic majority. And part of the reason that we had to start so early was because we were up against not just gerrymandering, which we'll talk about later, but also the power of incumbency. A lot of these Republicans who had been in office for several cycles, who had large fundraising advantages and who had high name recognition. And we had to work, for the better part of 2017 and 2018 to defeat that power of incumbency. But now our folks are the ones who have those advantages. They have that name recognition. They might even have war chests a little bit, or they're definitely starting to fundraise for those. So we certainly want to, make sure that everybody that we just elected is not a one-term congressperson, gets reelected in 2020 and beyond. But these folks aren't going to need our help until probably the summer of 2020. So that's when we're going to, take House districts that we either think we need to defend or ones where we think we have a chance to pick up even more seats. Matt mentioned a goal of even getting a bigger majority in the House. And we're going to lay those maps over our super state maps to make sure that we're helping you amplify the power of where you spend your money and where you spend your time.
So it's 2019. It's winter 2019. There's still snow on the ground. And we are talking about elections in fall of 2020. So that's a while away from now. And our work is going to change over that time period. So let's dig into that a little bit more. So Jenny, let's start with you. What phase are we in now? How should we think about the work that we're doing today?
Right, thanks. So this is the phase we call get going, right? Phase one is starting now and going through this summer, the summer of 2019. And what we know from previous cycles is that we're successful when we start working early, when we begin organizing and fundraising immediately. So even though November 2020 is more than 600 days away at this point, there's still a lot to do right now. We need to be helping other folks understand the story of superstates. We need your help educating people about that. We need to get folks registered in those super states. For every person we register there, we get a vote for 3 key races in those super states. And we need to fundraise. Early money was key to the folks that we helped elect in 2018. And so that's going to be essential, Matt.
Awesome. So then, Marisa, as the calendar continues and as we continue to get more data, more intel, how are things going to shift?
Yeah, so we're going to be spending the next, several months really gathering more data, gathering more intelligence, particularly looking at how voters turned out in a lot of local races that happened last cycle. And as we gather all this data, we're going to be able to give you guys a much more targeted state map that focuses on state House districts and state Senate districts that we think we can win. And the key here is if we flip control of state legislatures, we get to redraw the lines after the census in 2021, which is going to determine federal congressional districts. So, the work that we did the last 2 years, that was great. It allowed us to get control of the House for the next 2 years. But the work that we do in these state legislature districts for the next cycle allows us to have federal congressional maps that are fair and support the will of voters for the next 10 years. So we're really going to work to get you that information during this phase and make sure you're spending your time in the most highly targeted areas. We're going to continue registering voters in these key geographies that we will have identified for you. We're going to keep on fundraising, across the board, especially for state level district funds. And we are going to start mobilizing for some 2019 races. As folks might remember, the Virginia state legislature is up in odd years. And last cycle, we lost that by a literal single vote that they pulled out of a bowl. So we're going to go all in on key 2019 races like that. And you'll see us start mobilizing for some of those during this phase as well.
Yeah, thanks, Marisa. And actually, a lot of people had questions about 2019, so we're definitely going to dig into that more in a minute as well. But I think the key insight here is that we know that state house races are really important in some of these super states, but to really understand exactly the right races to target, you need to wait for more data to come back from the secretaries of state and other sources so we can train your firepower on the places that it matters the very most. Already today, we know which states matter, and so we can start immediately, but we're going to keep getting more fine-tuned as time goes on. And that's something we're really excited about. All right, Jenny, last phase. What do we do? When does it start? What's going to change as we get closer to the end?
You have to picture yourself in the summer and fall of 2020, and then it's going to be time to go wide. That's our third phase. At this stage, we'll be raising money for the candidates in the super states and the House defense candidates. Because we'll know who we're supporting at that point. We'll be through the primaries. And we're going to keep registering folks in all of these key states, but we're going to start switching over to voter turnout, especially in those super states, the ones with the incredible impact. And then we're going to win everything, everywhere. In fact, the last weekend, 2020, is going to make the blue wave 2018 look like a ripple. And we are going to take our country back.
Thanks, Jenny. It is kind of amazing to think that far ahead. It makes my head hurt a little bit, but I know all of us like to have a good plan. And so this is our plan. Those are the three phases. We're going to start today getting to work impacting the states that we already know that matter. We'll get more data. We'll get more targeted. And then eventually we'll switch over from a volunteer-driven campaign and waiting to a volunteer wave that's directly coordinating with campaigns and candidates and funding directly into them, and ultimately winning some really close races. All right, so Marisa, a lot of people have been asking about gerrymandering. You're the only lawyer on the call, so I thought I should ask you, can you just dig into it a little bit more? What does gerrymandering really mean? How does it relate to redistricting?
Yeah, so every 10 years, the government does the census, right, to figure out where everybody is, where people have moved around, all that sort of stuff. And the census is used for a lot of things. In electoral politics, it's used to determine which states get how many congressional seats through electoral votes. So the total number of electoral votes, in the House stays the same, right? It's always 435. There's always 435 seats. But as populations change, some states gain a vote or two, and some states lose a vote or two. So you have these, states get a new number of votes, and even if their votes stay the same, they get to draw a new map. And in most states, the state legislature, and on some level, the state judiciary, determines the lines of these maps. And in state legislatures where you have one party in power, they're more likely to draw these lines in a way that concentrate or disperse voters according to partisanship. So, you have these famously just, ridiculous districts that don't look anything like a boundary that would actually represent neighborhoods. They almost look like a 2-year-old took a marker to a map and scribbled and decided that this would be a district where people should live. And, Republicans do a lot of evil things. And one of the most evil things they did, and quite frankly, smart things they did in 2010, was gerrymander all these states to make it much harder for a Democrat to legitimately win that seat based on the number of voters who are registered there. And we even were up against this last cycle. To our friends in North Carolina watching today, I was shocked that we didn't pick up any seat on our map. And that's 110% gerrymandering. The effects of the gerrymander in North Carolina represent some of the worst in the country. We have this new census coming up that we're going to conduct in 2020. And what's going to happen in 2021 is all these states are going to get to redraw lines. And so if we're able to put the line drawers in these state legislatures, if we're able to make them Democrats, we're able to get fair maps. You're starting to see courts strike down really unconstitutional maps. That happened actually in Pennsylvania. But the only way that we're going to be able to do this going forward, we can't rely on the courts. That takes a really long time. It would be a lot better if we just put Democrats in state houses, got at least bipartisan state legislatures, and let people draw fair maps.
Thanks, Marisa. Long story short, let's win some state houses so our maps look less ridiculous going forward. All right. So, Jenny, we've been talking a little bit about voter registration by mail. You've been leading the effort on our side at Swing Left to try to understand this. Can you give people a little bit more context on what is this thing?
I love this program. It has been fun to work on. We are not afraid to try new approaches if we know that there's some good research behind them. And we're pretty excited. We're pioneering a fairly innovative approach by which we register voters long distance using letters, personalized letters. And that's called, for us, voter registration by mail. And the key here is that the letters are personalized in the sense that people write notes on them and handwrite part of them, but they're also personal. You share a reason that you want somebody to become part of the voting population. So it's more personal than the kinds of mass mailings that are often done for voter registration by mail. So this is more personal. We love that innovative approach. But the key thing here is that even if you live in California, like I do, you can have an impact on the Senate race in Georgia. So, and if you liked postcards, writing postcards to voters, you're going to love this. And being Swing Left, we'll be tracking the effectiveness of this as an intervention to get people to vote constantly, to make sure that if you give us time to write these letters, that we know your time is being used as effectively as possible. And even better, you do not have to wait to start. You can get going with us right now. There are a lot of people we need to register.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm really excited about this one. I think it's going to be great. All right, Marisa, last question goes to you. 2019, there are some elections coming up. What are we watching? What should folks look out for?
So in 2019, we're watching a handful of races. I think the first one we mentioned earlier, the Virginia State Legislature is up. Like I said before, we came within one vote of completing a Democratic takeover of, the State House. This time around, the State Senate and the State House are up, the House of Delegates, so we can do a total Democratic sweep of those chambers. We're watching governor's races in both Kentucky and Louisiana. If we can get a Democratic governor in Kentucky, we would have veto power over a bad map that would get drawn there if we couldn't take the State House. Same thing in Louisiana. We re-elect a Democratic governor, and we don't have to worry as much about gerrymandering. And then Wisconsin actually has some pretty key Supreme Court races that are going to factor into the lines that they draw during their census. So we're keeping an eye on some stuff in states that might not be super, but that are super important.
Thank you. All right, folks. This has been a lot. It's been a lot to take in. But we really wanted to take the time to go through it with you. We really know that the work we all did together last cycle was amazing. It was something that I've never seen in my over 20 years of organizing. And I'm really impressed and proud of what you all did. And we have a really big job in front of us and a really big opportunity. If we play our cards right, we don't only beat Trump, but we lock in a decade of progressive victories. We can set the stage for a world where we don't have to worry about opening up the New York Times and seeing what, buffoonery is unleashed upon us in Washington, D.C. We can elect a Senate that will represent us. We can find a presidential nominee that we're excited about, and we can work on the states. And there's going to be a lot of ways to do this. There's going to be some amazing presidential nominees. Many of us will fall in love with them. There'll be some really horrendous court cases that will make many of us tear out our hair. There'll be some fights in the Senate and the House that we'll get all outraged around, as we should. That's what it means to be a member of an active democratic society. But here at Swing Left, we're keeping our eyes on a relatively confined map, the super states, the 10, 11, 12 states through which the next decade runs. If we can win here, if we can expand the electorate so there's more people voting, if we can turn those people out, we can have an amazing 2020. But it's going to take all of us doing this work together. Just as it happened last time, that blue wave was not a force of nature. That was not an inevitability. That wasn't something that just happened. You made that happen. You all powered it. The people that are at a house party over a year and a half before an election to figure out our strategy, you are exactly the people that we need now to lay the groundwork, to get the gears turning so that we can have these huge wins. So thank you all so much for being there. Thank you for being part of Swing Left. Thank you for being here at this foundational moment. I'm going to hand it back over to your hosts now, who undoubtedly have interesting things to say about what's happening locally and ways that you can get involved. We're here at Swing Left. If you have questions, keep talking to us. We built this strategy with your input already. We're going to refine it with your input. This is a road we're walking down together. Thank you so much, and thank you for everything you're about to do.